Here we are again at another eve of the famous Thanksgiving holiday. The holiday that we engage in gorging ourselves with as much food as we can possibly force down our esophagus into our stomach. And as soon as our stomachs are empty enough, we'll force more food down. Well, with that comes questions, suggestions, a lot of nonsense about how do you keep your, quote, fitness routine going? How do you stay on track? How do you not gain weight? Well, let's take a person that overconsumes calories. Doesn't matter what the calories are or where the calories come from. If you overconsume calories on a consistent basis for a long enough period, you're going to wind up gaining fat weight from excess calories being stored as fat on your body. And the more you do it, the more you're going to gain. If you gain a certain amount and then you stop and just start eating your maintenance, then you're going to maintain whatever you gained. If you're in a deficit at any time for any long period of time, a calorie deficit, meaning you are not consuming as many calories as you are using during any cycle of measurement, then you will lose some weight. Now, not only is just weight the wrong thing to discuss, it's what type of weight. So in this instance, we're going to talk about fat because that's the concern, gaining fat weight and losing fat weight. Now, with Thanksgiving, the national average of 2,500 calories a day in a 24-hour cycle for an average expenditure for an average person. Let's just use that. So, say you overate 7,000 calories in one day. That would mean that you ate 6 plates that were 1,500 calories each during Thanksgiving Day. So you would be 7,000 calories over what you would burn up for that day. Now, potentially, that 7,000 calories could potentially result in 2 pounds of body fat over some period of time. But that can only happen if that excess energy was allowed to be stored as excess energy. Remember that it takes an average of 3,500 total calories to make a whole pound of stored body fat. So, if we look at the premise of eating on Thanksgiving and how much you could possibly eat, how much do you really think you could eat? Some people that are obese consume 20,000 calories on a regular basis because they're eating calorie-dense food, which is only food that is dense with fat. That's how you can overconsume easily when you eat mostly fat, or you eat carbohydrates that have a lot of fat in them. You eat meat is the biggest culprit that has a lot of fat in it, like fatty cuts of meat. But the protein in the meat and the carbohydrates in any vegetable, potato, or anything has 4 calories per gram. I don't care what it is, what the carbohydrate is or what the protein is. The protein. Now, the source of the protein is a different story. A protein source that we would use that is hopefully mostly protein can be real fatty. Some people consider cheese a protein source, which I would never consider that because it's 95% fat. So if you have a protein that's 50% fat, you're on the verge of saying that's a protein food. Because if you eat that, you're eating 50% of that is fat. So you never want 50% fat in your diet. But anyway, the fear of overeating for one day is almost utter nonsense. Even for the sedentary person. Because the sedentary person really doesn't have anything to fear but a continuation of what is probably going on with them anyway. Now, a person who is a little vain and concerned about how they look, and they may have a good body composition, low body fat percentage, where they can see their good body composition, and they have a fear of putting on a little bit of weight, that person has a bigger concern, but even that is overplayed. Because say you ate several hundred, few thousand calories over what you were going to use that day, all you have to do is adjust your eating and maybe your activity the next day or 2 or 3 or week, whatever it takes, based on how many calories you overate, whereby you would just consume your basic nutrition, because your basic nutrition does not amount to the total calories that your body will use throughout the day moving around. You have extra caloric necessity other than your basic nutritional needs. And those are discretionary calories. So if you don't do that and you're in a caloric deficit where your body actually needs more calories to just move around for the day, then your body has the opportunity to use the excess calories as energy, convert them into energy. That's what you have to do. Now, if you go and you indulge every day from Thanksgiving through Christmas, you could gain a phenomenal amount of weight, because you're doing what any person that winds up obese does. They overconsume calories on a daily basis, or frequently enough that the excess calories that are accumulating all turn to fat because they never get a body a chance to use them. So, like I say always on Thanksgiving, it's more to talk about this than just in a conversation to educate a person about it. But what I always say on Thanksgiving, if you are a restrained person, which hopefully most people are, just don't overeat. Don't overeat to the degree that you create a fear or make yourself sick. Your body will only let you eat so much anyway. You will pass out, choke to death trying to gorge yourself, actually. So say you even wanted to overeat. Eat. Eat yourself into oblivion. Eat till you pass out. But don't get up the next day and do the same thing if you want to avoid the consequences. You'll have minimal consequences, but they're not something that is this major. But if you want to avoid it, just don't gorge yourself. We eat food that we normally don't eat, so it's tastier. So we have been taught to celebrate and just have this bounty. We use the word bounty. We're going to be bountiful in our consumption. It's kind of like going to an all-you-can-eat bar and thinking you have to eat till you're sick and actually make yourself sick so you can get some perceived value out the purchase you made that said all you can eat. So this doesn't need to be some serious event. Now, if the average person would learn the necessity to change their body composition like every single human being on this planet needs to do, every single human on this planet needs to gain more muscle than Mother Nature gave you. Mother Nature does not give us a good plan. We have to do something about it, and we can. And you don't have to be tortured, feel pain, or hurt yourself in the process. You need to learn how to do it in a safe, effective, efficient, and most importantly, a sustainable way. And it's not rocket science, but it is science. And if you had an ideal body composition, you had a reasonable activity level, you wouldn't even be concerned about this unless you were doing something like competing in a bodybuilding contest, which is related to having a good body composition because the object in it is the same thing, gaining muscle, although it's not as extreme as a sport will require. But the same objection of gaining muscle. It's the same goal. And that's how a bodybuilder or bodybuilding is closely related to optimal health and wellness, by having an optimal body composition, because muscle was the number one component. Now, if you had more muscle, your body would use a lot more calories, would need a lot more calories than if you didn't. So it's just math. It's math, logic, and science. It's how it works, no matter what you hear. And I've been seeing a lot of things about going to the gym or in your house or wherever, go run around the block before you eat. Spend the day running and like so you can eat. That's an absurd statement. You cannot use a calorie before you eat it. There's no deficit you're going to build up that you can fill with food. You know, it's kind of like if you compare that to a gas tank. You say, well, if I want to empty my gas tank because I want to fill it up, which is a good thing. We want to fill our gas tank up. We can drive around, idle the car, and we can empty the gas tank, and then we can fill it back up. But that has nothing to do with the human body. Nothing. You cannot put yourself in a deficit prior to eating. Because if you went out and exercised or did something that required energy and you don't have it, you don't have the glycogen in your muscles, the glucose in your bloodstream, your body's not gonna, where's it gonna get it from? Guess what? It's gonna convert some of your muscle most likely. The last thing it's gonna want to do is pull some fat out of storage during the exercise and convert it into sugar that could be used. So none of this stuff that is commercially put out there makes any sense whatsoever. Now you may think, who am I to listen to? Well, if you really want to know who I am to listen to, you can go to riversbodycompositionmanagement.com and you can look at my bio, or you can listen to a 7-minute dissertation I put on a temporary site I have that sends a message to every human being about what the thought process should be with this whole idea of fitness and body composition. riversbodycompositionmanagement.com